Welcome to the OUV podcast. And today we have a recap on the previous episode where we discussed natural disasters, only that this time we have more knowledge and less skepticism. And we are recording. Welcome to episode 6 of the OUV podcast. Your hosts are Martin and
Michelle. I'm still gonna hang of it. It's okay.
No, it's okay. So,
now, tell me.
So after our discussion about disaster and about the existence of disasters or the non-existence of disasters and the part played by risk management, I decided to do the quote justice by trying to read more on the subject, specifically what people are talking about, people who are pushing this message of no natural disasters, to find out what to find out exactly what they mean, because I made some assumptions and conclusions about the message as it was, but I was looking at the message from a layman's perspective without really digging into any background information about where it came from.
Okay.
And I found out some interesting things. They are not totally out of this world, but I think they were interesting enough to talk about.
So tell me where you started then.
So where I started on Twitter.
Okay, good.
I love Twitter because of the character limit compels most users to cram in as much information as possible with limited words. So I thought I'd get a condensed idea about what no natural disasters is all about. And I followed the hashtag, and I found out some interesting things about it. People are talking about it a lot right now, and on Twitter it appears to have gained steam at some point in 2018. But people have been challenging the aspect of natural disasters for much longer. There was a prof who wrote some researcher who wrote a document about questioning the issue of natural disasters way back in 1975.
Okay.
Yeah, when I get a hold of it again, I don't have it on my fingertips and I don't have it on my desktop right now.
So then, all right. So you followed the goodness. Hold on. I just need to. Okay. So you followed your Twitter path essentially to figure out what the professionals who were using the hashtag no natural disasters was saying about natural disasters in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you found these articles, or when you found all this work that had been done, which of your assumptions were the first to go when you were like, oh, I get it now. This is why it makes sense.
One of the first assumptions I had was that it would be easy to confuse, starting with the no natural disasters. It would be easy in this age where people are arguing about what facts are and what facts are not, and people with no scientific knowledge or interest in science totally disapproving scientists and insisting that I've made up my mind and gravity doesn't exist. There's a lot of such people, and there's something such as no climate change or climate change deniers. So no natural disasters could have been misconstrued as saying they don't exist. It's just I thought it would come off offensive, which in a way it should be, but I thought it would come off offensive almost to the point of distracting from the normal intentions of the initiators of this project or program or whatever it is. But that was the first one to be disapproved, because there's people. The main idea was to separate nature and disasters.
Okay.
And to separate it specifically in the way people talk about it, because once you deal with how people talk about it and how such events are reported, because once people start talking about them differently, then people will develop solutions differently.
Okay.
So what, for the most part, the world has been calling natural disasters are termed as natural hazards or hazardous events.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And do you, after doing your bit of research, do you think that makes sense?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. for the most part,
Okay.
I think it makes sense. But again, people have to be realistic and not necessarily push it so much that people who are caught by surprise also end up being. There's also the risk of victim blaming with the no natural disasters campaign, and yeah, because hazardous events are things that always happen and will happen with or without the presence of humans.
Right.
But and natural disasters are said to, it becomes a disaster when the community that encounters this hazardous event lacks the resources to overcome it.
Right. See, and what you're doing right now is you're explaining what I sort of understood last time much better.
Yeah.
Right? Because I was missing that term hazard, right? Because it's exactly that, right? It's for example, yesterday in Paris or the day before, it was super windy. And it's possible that there could have been trees that were knocked down or things that got blown away. But a strong wind here in Paris, it's not a hazard. It's not a disaster. It will never become a disaster because we can definitely take care of how the wind is blowing, and it's not going to damage all that much things. But it's still technically a hazard. It has the potential to be one.
Yeah, and what of something like? Because they mentioned some of these hazardous events. They're the same things we talked about when we were thinking of natural disasters. When things that came to mind: floods, earthquakes, extreme cold.
Extreme cold and extreme cold, or extreme heat or extreme cold.
Extreme cold or extreme heat. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So all of those were included as, they termed them specifically as hazardous events.
Okay.
But I'm wondering what natural disasters, what this approach would mean for, say, Haiti when they had the earthquake in 2010. Like, in my mind, at the back of my mind, I still think that was a natural disaster, though they got a lot of international aid, which suggests they were unable to adequately, they lacked the resources to deal with it effectively. But there was also the first wave where the earthquake was actually, where people got injured, died, lost their homes from the actual earthquake.
Now here's a related question.
Yeah.
Do you think the hashtag, specifically the hashtag no natural disasters, would have changed anything in Haiti?
I think it would not. As much as social media is good for spreading information, I think the no natural disaster in Haiti, I call it Haiti, would have just if it were applied to Haiti at the time, I think perhaps it would have just generated a lot of online arguments rather than, because I don't know if it's part of the design of social media, but it's designed to make people react.
Right.
It's designed to make people react and always want to be right. And I was seeing some of the hashtags, some people commenting no natural disasters under reports by disaster management boards of different countries. When they tweet, okay, we had this, and they use the term natural disaster, then someone comments under the tweet and says no natural disasters. I found in such cases it was borderline reacting for the sake of reacting, or doing the I'm right, you're wrong, or proving people wrong, which is, people like to do that on social media.
Yes, and I thought they do.
Yeah, and I thought that would take away from the message, because the idea is to either get people. Someone posed the question: would it still be a natural disaster if an unoccupied part of the desert gets flooded? Gets flooded, and trees and animals get washed down into the ocean or something. Would it still be a natural disaster?
Right, and that's where, like, for some people who are maybe tracking those specific animals or flora, fauna, or whatever, maybe for them it's a disaster, right?
Yeah. Then
but if it's nobody else, then for them it's not a disaster.
And also, is it only a disaster when humans are affected, when the human cost is taken into account? Because in the definition they said if people lose their lives, people lose their livelihoods, or people lose their homes,
Mhm.
At that point, that's when it's considered a disaster. But what happens if animals if animals lose their lives, or if animals lose their habitat because of a hazardous event? Does that still count as a disaster?
I think as an extension of how it affects humans,
Mhm.
yes, right? So let's give the same desert oasis example, right?
Mhm.
If for whatever reason that the damage that the disaster or hazard does to that area
Mhm.
it affects only the plants and animals in that direct area, but as a result also affects the humans, whether it's 20, 30, 40 years in the future, because apparently there's a huge migration thing that happens, or it replenishes certain resources because they go to and fro there, right?
Yeah.
Those. So yes, I think it's only a disaster if it affects humans, whether directly or indirectly. That's what I think.
Okay. And just my mind went back to when there was a conference we had in BTU. Something it had something to do with nature, humans and nature. I don't remember the exact wording, but we had
Mhm.
profs who came over and they were part of a panel discussing it.
I think it was a nature culture journey.
Nature culture journey, exactly.
Yeah.
And there was a question about what is nature.
Oh boy.
Because before I never really thought about it, and I always assumed whenever I see greenery or I see monkeys in the forest or fish in water, that's part of nature. But
Right.
what is nature? Because Professor Schmidt refused one of the definitions of the urban centers being nature because of the fact that it was predicated by humans being equated to animals.
I mean, but aren't we though?
So is New York Times Square part of nature?
I see what you're saying. Right. Like for some people, right? It would. All right. Let's put it this way:
Yeah.
if we were not humans and we were aliens and we
Yeah.
were looking down onto the earth
Mhm.
and saw this species of animals, humans,
Mhm.
who are constructing their own environment to suit their needs,
Uh-huh.
right? In that case, yeah, absolutely. It's according to the people outside of this.
Mhm.
Yes, we are. It is. It in maybe in their eyes it looks like we are adjusting our home, our habitat to suit our needs, and therefore it is natural according to us, right?
Mhm.
Which would be kind of weird, and I don't really agree with that as a human.
I think humanity generally has a tendency to maintain the status quo, where
Yeah.
we have trained ourselves to believe that we are always on top. When anthropologists go to study these uncontacted tribes,
Right.
they refer to them as natives.
Right.
Yet the definition of native, it means that is anybody who is living in the place where they or their ancestors come from, quote unquote.
Right.
Or if you go back to construction, is an anthill part of nature?
Right. Yeah. Right. So for us humans, absolutely, it's a natural formation that these ants use to make their home. But maybe to the ants, it's not. Right?
Or a dam that has been built by a beaver. Is that part of nature, or is it?
And that's actually a great example, because I actually have a friend who one of the many parts of his former job was not only removing dangerous and or harmful plants in forests, but if there was a beaver dam that was built on rivers or streams or whatever that affected the local town, then they would have to take it apart. So in that sense, yes, it's technically natural because it's all made of all natural products. but to us humans, because it affects us, it's not natural, so we have to take it down.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
Or like whenever people say they want to go and enjoy nature. Or are we so weirded out by all other humans that we think being away from humans is now in nature? They want to enjoy pristine or untouched nature. That was especially romanticized by I think authors in Europe, by European authors.
And I'm so happy. I'm so happy that like nature conservation and like that they've gone away from that idea that nature has to be pristine and untouched in that sense, because it makes no sense. It's like, let me fence off everything so nothing can get in. Oh wait, we needed all these animals to come in to, I don't know, plant seeds and keep all the flora and fauna alive. Oh my goodness. No, it's so complicated because we humans have adjusted our environment so much. We're such efficient tool builders compared to any other creature on this living planet that we actually we overuse the resources that we have. I mean, to the point where we have just so much trash and plastic everywhere. It's literally a waste.
It's crazy. Tell
me.
Getting back to natural disasters.
Yes.
Yeah. If we don't use humans and use ants that build an anthill somewhere, where I don't even know where I'm going with this. If a flood,
listening though.
Yeah. If a place gets flooded and the anthill gets destroyed, they've lost their homes. I believe some may die and they've lost their livelihood.
Right.
But in that context, there's very little in terms of disaster preparedness.
No, because there was no. Because the preparedness to the disaster, all of that applies to humans exclusively. That's not a concept that's for ants. Unless we wanted to apply it to ants. If we wanted to go and say, all right, I am now a termite protector, and I'm going to write a plan, which is a disaster risk reduction plan for termite mounds and termites. Then in that case, yeah, absolutely. Then then I have to draw up some sort of design plan, whatever, to protect the termites from flooding or predators, or I don't know what.
Oh, okay. So if we leave the termites temporarily and come back to no natural disasters.
Yes.
Oh, come on. I had it and I lost it. I had a point at the front of my mind. It was literally knocking on my forehead. Then it just disappeared.
So no natural disasters, applying to ants and termites or whatever. I'm trying to refresh your memory. That's all.
Yeah. Then we came back to humans. Oh yeah, good. I have it.
Okay.
I was thinking of the No Natural Disasters campaign coming off as offensive.
Yes.
What I meant was not really it coming off as offensive. Yeah, partly it coming off as offensive. Like I believe the message might need to be tailored to, or would need to be approached differently in different parts of the world, because even if for international business people, they have to engage themselves with a particular type of etiquette for their products, or themselves for their person to be accepted within a particular community.
Do you want to try an example?
Good. An example would be in either the Japanese or the Chinese. For either the Japanese or the Chinese, I feel bad that I'm confusing the two. There's really there's no or yes. Especially no. It's hard for them to just say no.
Okay.
It's gonna be a verbose no.
Well, how about this? It's more hospitality culture.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, these non-natural disasters might need to be worded differently for it to be accepted in different parts of the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely, yes, because imagine this, right? You're I don't know, you're at your home, you're a mechanic. Your job is to fix people's cars, whatever. And on the news you always hear about natural disasters, blah 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 blah, no matter where you are in the world. And then all of a sudden there's a group of people who essentially come in and say, actually, these are not natural disasters. it's the same. It's the same as if I decided to go to an elementary school and started to talk to kids about capacity building.
Yeah.
because yes, it's like this is something I definitely can talk to kids about, but I mean, on first try, it's not going to land unless you are informed about what all of this is.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Actually, it's I found it. It's China. It's in China where saying no is very difficult.
Okay.
Yeah. It's gonna be both. It's gonna be a lot of explanations. It's always an indirect way of them saying no, especially. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and yeah, you're right. You are also right about coming to people with the concept that sometimes radically opposes everything they believe about something.
Now, hold on.
Yeah.
I just realized that we have our first live guest.
Oh, cool.
Do you know who it is?
Who?
Jakob.
Oh, Jakob. Hi, Jakob.
Okay. So actually, you know what we can do? We can
I think
pause.
he's in Kazakhstan or Kurdistan.
Oh, wait.
Jakob
he's
was
spending his time.
He's in one of the stands.
And he's spending his time watching episode 6 of the OUB podcast.
Uh-huh.
Oh, great. It's fantastic. All right.
Uh-huh.
Let me read to you what he's written so far, and maybe we can answer his question, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. So he says, "Hi there, this is Jakob. I have a question. If we define the difference between a hazard and a disaster as the consequence, to what extent can the quantifiable monetary budget of a disaster risk management be disaster prevention? Since the nature of a risk will involve the possibility of a disaster great enough that no such budget can prevent it. Do you think emergency of civil society movements, raising awareness, blah, 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 can prevent these type of things?"
I'll start with the last part because it's fresh in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm uncertain. Disasters are basically these hazardous events. I'm still struggling with separating natural disasters and hazardous events. These hazardous events are basically, for us humans, like an immovable force, an unstoppable force, for the most part. So it's either we build immovable objects or move the objects that you're building to a different place. But at the same time, part of the definition, I looked at the website of the organization that has been formed to deal with disaster risk management, specifically the organization pushing this no natural disasters agenda. And okay, just a moment.
Yeah, no problem.
I found it.
Found it?
Yeah, the dynamic risk reduction website says a hazard.
Can you tell me how to find it?
Okay, let me just copy the link and share it with you.
Okay, great. Because then I can jump to it. Also, Jakob says that he's back in Holland.
Oh, he's back in Holland?
Yes, and that he went too corporate with his new career, so he wants to talk heritage to essentially cleanse himself. I'm paraphrasing, mind you, but...
he went to?
Holland.
No, you said he did something with his heritage.
No. So he wanted to talk about something heritage, so that it would be fun for a change, but I think it's more of a cleansing of the soul.
Yeah.
All right. You got the link for me?
Just a moment. It's it refuses to copy from my PDF. Okay. Just a moment. I'm gonna have the link right now.
Oof. Yeah.
That's one of the links. The other one is on its way.
Great. I will click on that.
Oh, so just I can attempt to answer Jakob's question as I give you the second link. About stopping natural disasters will still be. I think that's still a long way off. Stopping what we call natural disasters is still a long way off. But part of the definition they give for these disasters incorporates that fact, and they say that it's when the community that's affected lacks the resources to deal with this hazardous event. So one way of stopping the disasters would be equipping these communities. Like if it's a community that constantly experiences flooding, perhaps one solution would be to give them all boats, or to
as an example, not as a proven fact.
as an example, to give them perhaps inflatable rafts
Right.
if the flooding is more or less predictable.
I think you remember the comparison that you made last natural disaster episode
Mhm.
Was doomsday preppers,
Yeah, doomsday preppers, exactly.
right? An extreme example,
Mhm.
but I mean, of course, the natural hazard, what you have, it will always be a hazard and it will always be there.
Mhm.
But it's the work of multiple communities, not just the local community, to work on finding solutions so that there can be some sort of disaster risk prevention
Yeah.
that is either assisted by the government or by some organizations which would be invested in keeping your culture and or area safe,
Mhm.
your people.
So the Dynamic Risk Reduction Dynamics website says a hazard will only become a disaster should it impact the workings of a society or a community. It stands to reason
Right.
that this can only happen when a society or community exists.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so if we were to compare it then, right, to the ant example that we had, if the ants are our mutual neighbor,
Mhm.
right, and we cooperated with them to essentially have some sort of disaster risk mitigation or whatnot,
Mhm.
We would have to essentially have their consent to do so, if you know what I mean. Like if they were actually our neighbors and we wanted to prevent their I went completely off track.
No, you're good. If we replace the ants with coral reefs,
right?
Yeah, and coral reefs are our neighbor. And there's this saying that if your neighbor's house is on fire, you're either gonna laugh at them until your house catches fire, or you help them to put out the fire before it spreads to you.
Right. Exactly.
And I was working in Mombasa in 2011 doing an internship, and those scientists used to go underwater to study the corals. And later I got more acquainted with why corals are studied so much, and I found out that they're good indicators about the quality about environmental changes or the quality of water.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like that's why the Great Barrier Reef in Australia is it's almost a scandal because it is. It appears to have been that there might have been attempts to cover up the degree to which the corals have been bleached, because corals they don't just die and decompose, but when they die they lose when either they die or when they're unhealthy they lose their pigment. They lose their pigment and appear bleached.
Yeah, and Jakob just wrote, apparently they're just fine.
Yeah. What are just fine corals?
No, but so speaking to another thing that Jakob said, he mentioned that, like, speaking of our comparison of ants and humans, he's saying, like, it kind of proves the fact that nature is a very anthropocentric, like human-centric concept, right? Because nature is everything that is not human, right?
Yeah, but I think there's also a movement to try and change that. A movement that's slowly gaining momentum, and that's the people who are saying that we are now entered the age of the Anthropocene.
Right, the human era.
The human era, yeah. But I hardly doubt that this is a new subject because. Not even because some scientists shouted about it many years back, but because of the way what we call indigenous communities, how they handle the environment and how they treat the environment. Most of the time they get to be treated as backwards or people who don't want to accept modernity, but it seems like they got there way before most of us, and they understand the impact that humans have on the environment. And part of their culture includes very specific manners, very specific rules and regulations on how people should interact with the forest or the animals or things like that.
Right.
Like I'd give the example of the Mijikenda. It's an ethnic group in Kenya. They live along the coast, and they have these kaya forests, which are sacred forests.
I do. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I just want to be sure that I'm up to date. So yes, continue.
And the elders are in charge of the forest. Though most of the forests have been lost, a few, they're called Kaya forests, are still being, they continue to be protected today by law as well. And these elders occasionally conduct guided tours, but there's strict regulations you have to maintain. When you're coming to the forest, you don't wear your shoes, and you don't bring anything into the forest, and you don't take anything from the forest.
Okay.
And I'm not certain if they are also the same people who say that if you're going to harvest wood for cooking, only take from the twigs that have fallen, twigs and branches that have fallen, but not from the living trees. I'm not certain about that part, but I know that they're very strict on what people bring or take out of these forests. I want to say, yeah. And that's not very different from Australian immigration or even US immigration right now. And how whenever someone is crossing the borders, they're really strict about people having fruit.
Yeah.
Okay, in Australia, they're even stricter about fruit on anything, any object that might be carrying living things like bugs or insects or stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, don't tell the U.S. Border Patrol from in the direction of Canada, because my brother and I, we had 2 oranges that they could have completely, we would have been done for if they knew we had those 2 oranges.
But I was thinking, regardless of how tough Australian immigration rules are, what if hypothetically someone eats so much fruit, then goes and poops in their garden once in Australia?
Yes, I'm with you. I understand. Yeah,
you become like a drug mule for invasive species.
I mean, you joke though, but in some ways that is a total possibility. But no, so on that same point though, I was going to sidetrack on the fact that people brought snakes to Florida where there was no snakes in Florida, and now there's tons of snakes in Florida, something like that.
Yeah.
But that's besides the point. I think, all right, so we still have, all right, so let me ask you this. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover or discuss about natural hazards, disasters, all that stuff? Or did you hit on pretty much all the points that you wanted to hit on?
I'm on the last one right now. Or the couple of last ones.
Okay.
It's I'll start with a quote from the nonaturaldisasters.com website. nonaturaldisasters.com. So it says, the term natural disaster, and it's put in quotes, is factually incorrect and misleading. The hashtag No Natural Disasters campaign aims to change the terminology to show that whilst some hazards are natural and unavoidable, the resulting disasters almost always have been made by some human actions and decisions. Yeah, so this one is the one that I felt, this is the aspect of the No Natural Disasters campaign that I felt was a bit towards victim blaming, but I guess I could also look at it from the point of it's us taking responsibility, because using natural disasters as a way of, in this quote, they actually contradict themselves slightly, because it says while some disasters are natural and unavoidable, blah blah blah. So I think it's on the positive side, it shows that they're encouraging people to take responsibility and no longer maintain the defeatist position, because if we continue to use the term natural disasters as it has been used, it's like waving a white flag and assuming we are helpless and our hands are tied, yet our hands are not tied. And as humans, there's the stuff we could either do for ourselves or for other people who might lack the resources to deal with these disasters. That's why my extreme example was Doomsday Preppers from the last episode. Was Doomsday Preppers actually, if those resources would be, those resources and know-how would be channeled towards people who experience their doomsday each and every single day. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but I think what this entire 2-episode series has proven, right, is that things that are repeated over media about natural disasters, but like, we're surrounded by it when we're younger, and we hear it still now when we're adults. To change that conversation, people, at least at a high level, have to know why there's this terminology change, right?
Yeah.
And to do that, you need to work with. You have to work to change what it actually means, so that when it gets down to people who essentially don't care,
Yeah.
then they start using it.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, I believe social media's built-in evil of encouraging reactionary interactions might be a good thing for this, because with the controversy, it might draw people's attention towards it. And I believe when people argue and debate about it, it will come out that there's more that we can do as humans about these natural hazards and people who are met by disasters. Basically,
that's true.
Pushing the envelope. Sometimes people push the envelope and it looks crazy, but they're making sense.
Yeah, and I think I'm one of the probably many converts who says that yes, I might slip into saying natural disasters on occasion, but I know now that it's not so much about the disasters; it's about the hazards, and you have to be prepared for these hazards.
Yes.
No.
I too became a convert when I looked through during the process of researching. I got to see the logic in the message, and yeah.
No. Well, I mean, hopefully with any luck, they'll I mean, we have one viewer live right now, so hopefully there's other people who are also converted.
Yeah.
But yes. I think we can call this an episode, but I think we can preview what we'll talk about next time.
Absolutely.
So I think we'll talk about the UNESCO Africa China Forum.
Yeah, and I think you'll be leading that discussion because you were there live.
I was present and accounted for that forum. As funny enough, I was, since I do an internship at the Asia Pacific unit at World Heritage Center, I apparently was the China half of the Africa China Forum.
Really?
in terms of the unit that was working there, my boss, of course, is Feng Jing, who is head of unit, who is Chinese, but he wasn't there the entire time, so I had to represent.
So what should we look forward to in the next episode?
Well, we'll be talking about what happened at the forum. So who spoke, the different subjects that were covered. In addition to me being caught by a media outlet who apparently filmed me dancing.
Really? I saw the video.
True.
I saw the video on Twitter and on Facebook, and I wasn't sure if that was just one of the attendees or there was also one from the media.
No, that was the one from the attendees. The media one I'm still trying to find. So maybe with any luck we'll see it the next episode.
Good.
All right. So, good. Then I think with that I'll say have a happy Sunday.
Have a happy Sunday and happy birthday to Samson.
Happy
belated birthday to Samson and his friend Luke, who is celebrating his birthday today.
And happy birthday, Samson, Luke.
Many thanks to Jakob, our
one and only live viewer.
Yeah. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate your participation a lot.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we'll sign off and see you next time.
See you next time. Bye. And I'm ending the recording.
And I finished the stream.